With the world's attention focused on Israel's war on Palestine's Gaza, tensions are mounting in the occupied West Bank. Israeli forces have increasingly been conducting overnight raids, mass arrests, and airstrikes in the occupied territory, while settler violence surges simultaneously in a situation the UN has said is spiraling out of control. From October 7 to 29, at least 115 people have been killed by Israeli forces or illegal settlers in the occupied West Bank, and more than 2,150 people have been injured by Israeli forces, while 39 others have been wounded by settlers. Most recently, on October 30, Israel's military spokesperson said that several militants had been killed in a drone strike in occupied Jenin.
We've seen the IDF increase its search and arrest operations over the last 2 weeks, where we've seen an increase in settler violence, whether in some cases going into villages and towns and shooting at local residents who do not have similar means to defend themselves.
So what's happening in the occupied West Bank? Since Israel's continuous bombardment and total siege of Gaza, following Hamas's surprise attack on October 7, solidarity protests have erupted throughout the occupied West Bank.
Of course, there's going to be a lot of sympathy for what's going on in Gaza, because Palestinians don't see them as two separate territories. They're effectively one nation, one people. But what has made this so much worse in the West Bank now, and where many are worried that Israel is now opening up a second front that could potentially lead to something like a potential uprising.
At least 1,400 people have been arrested so far in the occupied West Bank since October 7. The UN reports that there have been over 167 attacks by settlers against Palestinians, resulting in injuries and damage, and in some instances, Israeli forces were also involved. The occupied West Bank, a landlocked territory bordered by Israel to the west and Jordan to the east, is home to 3 million Palestinians and almost 700,000 illegal Israeli settlers. Since Israel defeated its Arab neighbors in 1967's Arab-Israeli War and seized control of the occupied West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem, all three territories have been known for their complex and contested geopolitical status under Israel's military occupation. And the occupied West Bank in particular has drastically shrunken in size due to a number of historical events and the ongoing expansion of Israeli settlements, which are technically illegal under international law. Over the years, there have been escalating tensions between Palestinians and illegal Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank, and Israeli forces have demolished Palestinian homes and evacuated communities to create space for more and more illegal settlements. These settlements are built to house Jewish people who have been invited to relocate to Israel. There are about 279 illegal Israeli settlements on Palestinian land, and some of them are so large they've become like cities.
You've seen almost 13 Palestinian communities just in the last 2 weeks alone effectively displaced because of settler violence. Because settlers have been going in, attacking residents, burning their properties. A lot of these settlers are often extreme right-wing Zionists that often you find them clustered in particular areas within the West Bank. Many of these are able to act with complete impunity. They're often protected by the establishment. There's very few cases where the Israeli police or Israeli army are willing to even investigate, let alone prosecute.
And recently, these confrontations have become increasingly fatal, especially as these Israeli civilians have been armed with weapons. Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir said thousands of weapons were being distributed to citizens to enable them to protect themselves. He also ordered a relaxation of regulations for granting gun licenses to private citizens. Palestinians living in the occupied West Bank are subject to Israeli military rule, while Israeli settlers live under Israeli law. And Palestinians have accused Israeli forces of turning a blind eye to the atrocities being committed by the settlers, if not encouraging them.
We've had some horrific cases coming out from Israeli human rights organizations that are now documenting this, where we're seeing them kidnap people, beat people, torture them, burn. I think in one instance there was a report that just came out describing cigarette burns, the fact that they had been trying to sexually assault some people they've kidnapped. The fact that they're urinating on their captives. Some of the people that have been implicated are soldiers.
Over 1,000 Palestinians have been displaced from their homes in the occupied West Bank since October 7.
I don't think there is a single Palestinian that doesn't have someone who has either been killed or has been in an Israeli prison, right? There is not a single family that hasn't been affected.
It's probably the worst deterioration in security we've seen.
The last few weeks have been the deadliest for Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. According to data from the UN and Palestinian authorities, more Palestinians lost their lives in the Israeli-occupied West Bank in recent weeks than in any other 15-year period in the past. As Israel continues to pound Gaza, What will be the fate of other Palestinian territories that are already on the edge?